Uh, if you examine any election in any country, you understand why my efforts have been met with evasion, nothing but evasion. Of course, no presidential candidate or no president or prime minister or financial minister of any country in the world could possibly disprove that there is one and one only solution to inflation and deflation, as we've just proven. That nor could they disprove that maladisposition is a problem, nor could they disprove that we suffer this process of inherent, irreversible, and therefore terminal multiplication of falsified indebtedness, nor could they disprove that we suffer this falsification of indebtedness. In fact, we have an open freedom. I've confronted the banking system and taxation systems with these issues since, well, formally since 1976, formally in terms of I defended myself against IRS audit in 1976 on my birthday. It happened to be uh, uh, by asserting this falsification of indebtedness and demanding that I be allowed to contest the constitutionality and rectitude of the currency in federal court. And that was, of course, is the last thing that they want to happen. They have no answer to these arguments. So we have, even currently, right now, we have an ongoing Freedom of Information Act inquiry against the Bank of England, demanding that it produce uh, written material or material of any nature would or consistency would satisfy us, but they insist that we request only written material. They're doing everything in their power to avoid having to answer the questions, including saying, alleging that they're unintelligible. So we're asking how the Bank of England gives up lawful consideration, that is, property equal to a debt that it purports to create, when it issues further evidence of our promissory obligations in creating money. And it can't answer this. And you can go to whatdotheyknow.com and research this now. So, in truth, everything around you is proving that, what I'm, testifying, the testimony that I'm giving is the absolute and only truth, including this proof of solution, which comes down to merely an eradication of interest and an obligatory schedule of payment. So now we're stuck in this position where, in servicing this perpetually multiplied sum of falsified indebtedness, we're obligated to pay all the principal in circulation, out of circulation, in a very, very brief time, in which we would collapse immediately. So the first thing that we need to do is to challenge the banking system, which in effect has issued an irredeemable promise to pay, a promise of the bank which it's made no provision whatever to redeem in any value, nor has it given up any value to create it. Therefore, it's entirely a false and irredeemable promissory obligation. So what I've done, because every government in the world has basically been installed and sustained by the largest campaign contributors, for instance, by the financial system. The prevailing candidates on both sides of the aisle here are funded by, the banking system, and of course, they don't take questions on the banking system. None of them have been accountable to me. met with nothing but evasion for 43 years, which is a very significant crime in itself against the people, because we could have resolved these issues long before they manifested to the degree that we are, and we're all suffering in every imaginable way as a consequence of this obfuscation of the currency. I hope people that these terms are becoming more comfortable to you as I speak them, and I hope I've defined them enough as I go along. What I've done to address the political and monetary issues is I've authored a global mandate for mathematically perfected economy and absolute consensual representation, which denies the government any power to deny us our right to resolve the falsification of indebtedness to the banking system by issuing to the banks a like irredeemable promise to pay. Now, this is be understood not to be pretending that an equal crime as the banks have committed resolves all the crime somehow. Far from that. We provide to resolve every detail of the crimes in this worldwide mandate for mathematically perfected economy and absolute consensual representation. We, the people, as sovereign individuals, are declaring what our rights are and the limits to which we will be subject by any authorizable government. So we prove that this is a crime against us. We prove this falsification of indebtedness. We prove a fact of singular solution. We prove a fact of a singular just means of immediately transforming any of the present systems into mathematically perfected economy. And this is a part of it. It's a part of a divorce from the banking system, which eliminates deflation of the circulation, because we are authorizing ourselves to pay our debts, our falsified debts to the banking system, and the falsified costs to government, which have been multiplied by the banking system, by issuing like irredeemable promises to pay. And we're giving governments of the world, every government of the world, if you sign this mandate, no alternative whatsoever but to pass this, to establish this, accept our establishment of this document, of this global mandate. So by resolving taxations to government and the falsified sum of indebtedness to the banking system, we're preventing this immediate deflation that would occur in payments of principal and interest out of circulation for a while, until we set up mathematically perfected economy, which will take the place of the present banking system largely only as a data center and software. And the way that it works is we decide what limitations we want to place on creditworthiness. A given society might, for instance, want, instead of persisting in these bankrupt social propositions such as Social Security over here in the United States, for instance, instead of persisting in them, which propositions are bankrupt, we might force people to save half of their wages during their working life, so that over a like time span of retired life, they can maintain the same standard of living. So creditworthiness might be considered in that case, for instance, that each country is able to determine how it wants to certify creditworthiness. So we might take half your earnings are dedicated to that. So of the remaining left, what is left, the remaining half, let's just say half of that, or a quarter of your entire earnings, is dedicated to the costs you already have. And we want you to also keep, let's just say, 10% free for whatever somehow. So there's a certain 15% left. And so if that 15% of your earnings can afford to pay an $83.33 a month payment for a $100,000 home under mathematically perfected economy, you're allowed to buy the home automatically by software, which just makes that decision from your earnings pattern and the cost of and lifespan of and determined rates of depreciation that we decide we want to apply to that kind of a property. So you simply then the payments are deducted from your accounts and applied to the accounts of the recipient, and that's how it's done. So that's all there is to replacing the central banking systems of the world. It would largely be a data center and software which applies the rules. There's no one overseeing it, and no need for regulation whatsoever involved. Why? Because our obligatory schedule of payment and eradication of interest itself, therefore, maintains a perpetual one-to-one relationship between remaining circulation and remaining value of related property. As we pay against our $100,000 promissory obligation against this house, for instance, in year one we pay $1,000 for the year against that house. The remaining value of the house is $99,000, and $99,000 of circulation remains in circulation because we paid $1,000 out of circulation. It was retired. It's just subtract it from our accounts. We don't even need physical money to do this. So that's basically it. As I demonstrated to the Reagan campaign in 1979, all this could be done in a day, provided that you had prepared a data center and prepared the software, which really is little more than a conventional banking system installation. So this would relieve us of needs to cash our paychecks, collect our bills and pay our bills, and so on and so forth. This, what I call a common monetary foundry, takes the place of a central banking system, and without any regulation whatsoever, that is, just according to laws that we intend to abide by, which parts of which are implemented in software. Depreciation and certification of creditworthiness are implemented through software. All of our issues are solved, and that's it basically.
Okay, well, just on what you were saying there, this sorry, my tongue doesn't seem to want to work. Basically, just on what you were saying, I have two major questions that's creeping up in my mind, if you don't mind.
Not at all.
No. The first question would be, you said a few minutes ago about us being 12 times ahead of where we
right. People in foreclosure, for instance, say you'd own that house for 20 years,
yeah,
under this system, and you were paying $1,000 a month for it. So every month you're paying what you would in a year in mathematically perfected economy.
Uh-huh.
Okay, so you're in foreclosure now. You've been paying against that house for 20 years. You've paid, let's say, at $1,000 a month. You've paid, $12,000 a year times 20 years for it. So you've paid $240,000 for a $100,000 house. Under our transition to mathematically perfected economy, you would own that house free and clear, because the transition does this, and I might have overlooked mentioning this, but the transition to mathematically perfected economy is this, and this is just a simple formula for justice, because interest was unwarranted. Because principal is to be retired from circulation, because a promissory obligation is for just the principal, and is rightly so, because the real creditor who gives up property is paid in full, equal to their own production, which is what all of us desire to do, and that's the only truly free and just trade in the world.
Mm-hmm.
So So basically, that was a $100,000 house, and you paid $240,000 for it. You've overpaid $140,000. The bank's going to take it from you, and because they multiply the cost of everything, they might consider it a $500,000 house now, and they're going to sell it for $500,000 and collect on a $500,000 debt of principal multiplied 5 times over, and then it will sell again and be refinanced for 5 times that, because that's the consequence of this system. Well, under the transition to mathematically perfected economy does this. It counts all prior debts instead